Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, wherever you may be located today. Thank you all for joining us today for this webinar on IT and data center facilities. Just to go over some housekeeping first, please keep yourself muted at all times so we can all listen together to the presentation. In terms of technical issues, our best advice is to leave and then rejoin in case. If you have any further issues, then I would recommend going to the logmein/GoToWebinar support site where you can look at their frequently asked questions. If you have any questions yourself, there is a questions panel you'll be able to see. You should be able to see. If any time you have a question, please type it in there, and we will try to take as many questions as we can towards the end of the session. We also have, it's going to make it a little bit interactive today, so we have one poll, and we'll get to that soon. So if you can participate in that too, and we can make this session a bit more interactive and kick it off with a bit of interactivity. So today we're going to be talking about the convergence between IT and data center facilities. I have here with me Edward van Lent. He is the chairman and CEO of EPI, Enterprise Products Integration Limited. Edward has over 30 years of experience in the global high-tech, high-availability, and mission-critical data center industry. With a unique combination of in-depth technical knowledge and an excellent grasp for the trends and developments in the industry, Edward is a key driver behind the success of EPI, growing EPI from a small company of UK origin to a global organization with presence in over 60 countries. Edward is an active member of a number of data center professional groups and also sits on the TR42 committee. He has performed over hundreds of data center audits worldwide. He's also been honored with awards such as the Worldwide Field Operations Award, the Excellence Award, and the prestigious Chairman's Achievement Award and CEO of the Month. With this in mind, he's a much sought after speaker for his extensive knowledge, and we are very glad to have him here today. Edward, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to give you the control and we can get started on the presentation.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction. Let me look at the button. So my screen, let me make sure I select the right item. Hold on.
Yeah.
PowerPoint. And hopefully everything is all clear on the screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Excellent. Well, very good. Well, again, thanks for the introduction and welcome everybody to this webinar where we will talk about the convergence between IT and data center facilities, which is a very timely topic because it's happening in many organizations for a number of reasons, and we hope to shine a little bit light on it, why that is happening, and what are some of the things that you could do around it to make sure that you are going to ride the wave, so to speak. Now, before we're going through this agenda, I would like to bring up the poll question to get a bit of a feel for the audience. So if we could pull up the poll question.
Yes, I'll launch a poll now for everyone. So it should now be on the screen. Just give everyone a few seconds to answer that. Okay, give people a bit more time. There we go. Yes, almost everybody's there. Great.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right, I think that's everyone. So let's close it and see the results. There we are. So it seems we have a mix between both IT and data centers and also data centers, but it's nice to see we've got a small share in people working in IT too.
Excellent. So it's a mixed audience.
Yes, yes. Okay, I'm going to close the results and back to you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for that, and thanks for everybody in participating. So what we would like to do today is to give you a little bit of an introduction on EPI, the organization I'm heading, just to give you a feel for who we are. And then we're going to dive into the topic of today, the complexity of IT and data center environments and how they relate to each other. And we're going to give you an insight on what we call the 3Ps and what that is all about. The good news, there's a freebies as well. We have 3 resources for you to tap on later. And then we go into the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, write them down, keep them in your head, and we will be gladly going through as much as we can given the time limitations. And then, stick around because we have a very good surprise for you that could actually enable your career, to take to the next step. As I said, quick introduction on EPI. We're originally from the UK, where we started in 1987 in a place called Oxfordshire. And in the 1999, so almost 2000, we basically started the Singapore office, which is now the global headquarters. So we are, a 30-plus-year-old organization. We're present with physical offices in 11 countries, basically serving all the time zones, around the world. And we have a very large partner network spanning over 60 countries and more than double of those in cities where we are delivering our services. So who are we really? What do we do? We actually are by origin, a data center organization, and we are delivering 3 main services. We do what we call design validation. This is a service aimed at customers who are designing and building either a new or a enhanced data center, and they would like to make sure that everything is in good shape before they start pouring the concrete, so to speak. We also have auditing and certification of a running data center, and that is split in 2 parts. We can do auditing and certification for the data center facility and its surroundings, as well as the operations, governance, and maintenance of data centers. And we have also professional training, both for IT as well as for data centers. So that was just a very quick introduction, so at least you know who we are. So let's talk about the complexity of IT and data centers. Now, people, and you know it well, but some of the end users don't always realize what is behind the screen. In a IT environment, there are so many things that we need to do in order to deliver the services to our customers. And whether those customers are internal customers within the organization or external customers, that is, really not so relevant. In the end, we serve both of them. And in order to do so, there are many, many things that we need to do in the IT side, but the IT, of course, heavily relies on the data center. And that is a bit of a problem because there are basically sometimes the conflicts of interests. The good old IT professional that has come up with a fantastic application and software environment and wants to put that on the service and simply go to the data center manager and say, well, I'm going to get a rack, it's 30 kilowatts, and can you please put it in your data center? Unfortunately, a lot of the data centers are not obviously built for that, especially the legacy data centers. They are typically, featuring maybe 3, maybe 6 kilowatt racks. And if the good old IT professional comes in and says, by the way, I need a 30 kilowatt, the data center professional will freak out and say, what are you doing there? You put basically the power that can feed 10 normal homes, and you try to put it in a small 19-inch rack. What is wrong with you? The other thing, the good old planning issues. IT have figured everything out, knows what is required to make the application go live, orders a bunch of servers on a pallet, and basically last minute Friday afternoon, tell the data center facility engineer that a stack of servers coming in, and yes, of course, that all needs to be up and running by Monday. We might laugh about these examples, but this is real case scenarios where the planning typically between the IT and facility is not really the most smoothest process in most of the organization. I guess this is more on the other side, being a data center professional. Not uncommon that the good old IT engineers throw things in a rack, plug it in as quickly as they can to make sure the application goes live, and basically leave a spider web of cables behind. And of course, the data center manager is freaking out because this impacts cooling. It's becoming a nightmare to manage. And of course, we would like them to follow the right standards. And sometimes those standards are known but not enforced. Or sometimes in the IT, we're just not aware of the data center standards relevant to, for example, network structure cabling. Or the good old, who has done this for me? The data center manager has done a nice layout of the data center with all the cooling infrastructure. and someone of IT start throwing a bunch of power cables and network cables in front of the aircon, suddenly blocking. And of course, we start complaining, my IT equipment is overheating, can you please fix it? And then the data center engineer finds out that somebody has been blocking the air conditioning under the raised floor with a bunch of network cables. I think you all know, especially if you work in a data center environment, we as IT people are very good at throwing in extra cables, but we are very bad at pulling them out again if we don't need them. And as a result, we often see them stacking on top of each other year over year. It's not uncommon when we go for data center audits and we stick our head underneath the raised floor that we find a bunch of cables hanging loose, basically. And I think we all know that a cable can only work if you connect them on both sides, right? So any cable with a loose connector, you might as well throw it away. But very often, a bit of cable mining is not always done. So plenty of issues typically between the IT and data center professional, where either there is a conflict of interest or it's just bad communication, etc. And with that, I can actually, fill a whole hour of examples, which we obviously not going to do. But there is a long list of, tremendous issues that we typically find. So more and more organizations have come to realize that, IT and data centers are not two different disciplines. Either you need to put them under one umbrella, or you need to at least make sure there is proper communication so that everybody understands and work towards the common business goal. And let's forget or not forget that nowadays, we are moving more to what we call VOE, virtual of everything. In the old days, we had an application on a single server. That is history now. We have many applications on a single server. We have virtualization of servers, virtualization of storage, virtualization of network. And believe it or not, we now are even looking at virtualization of power and other typically, data center facility services. So we are moving more and more towards not a cable left and right type of environment, but more in a software-driven facility infrastructure. And that is a bit of a problem because a lot of the IT folks now suddenly start having to deal with data center facility. And I always say that is like having a butcher in a baker shop or a baker in the butcher shop. IT people are very smart and very well trained on everything around network and applications and storage, you name it. But if you ask them, how do you balance power? And how do you balance between three-phase? And how about cooling capacity? How do you calculate that for your good old 30 kilowatt rack? Obviously, they would not really know how to do that, and you can't blame them. They were not trained for it. But the fact is that a lot of the IT people are basically thrown inside the computer room now, and they are expected to manage both. And that obviously could be very risky for an organization because a small mistake could have a tremendous impact, especially if the facility goes down. So what we need to do as an organization, right? If you want to run a high availability and a high efficiency IT and data center environment, you need to make sure you got the 3 Ps right. That is the products, the processes, and people. Now let's have a look at product. Now, why is that important? Because there are many things that we have in a data center environment. We have, we have power, we have cooling, we have fire suppression, we have physical security, you name it. And we need to make sure that all those things are designed for high availability and for the efficiency that we are planning for. We can't just focus on power and cooling, because if the network is not properly designed and managed, then again, we could still have outages leading to great business loss. Now, we have some good news though, because there are many standards that you could look at if you want to design portions of this infrastructure. So if you want to know everything about certain network cabling, you can take the relevant standards. If you want to know everything about fire suppression systems, you have all those relevant standards. And there are some of those that have an overarching type of approach, the ones that you see here on the chart in red, where they are basically having one book, so to speak, trying to cover all the aspects of the data center, whether it's network, whether it's just the facility, whether it is the site location, etc. In general, two of the most common used references are uptime, which is basically a guideline. It's not a standard. That one is actually only addressing power and cooling, so it doesn't care about physical security and networking, etc. And the other winner out of those 5 on the list is the TIA 942, although others like the ISO and EN are also coming up. So that was the product side. Now we also need to look at the process side, because in fairness, human error is one of the largest reasons why data centers go down. That could be the traditional oopsie, somebody pushes the wrong button at the wrong time, but it could also be process related matters where either processes are not well defined or they are just not well executed and people basically do the wrong thing. Now, again, there are standards that could help us. Yeah, one of the standards that you could look at when you're running data center facilities is called the DCOS, the Data Center Operations Standard. This is basically a standard addressing the 11 disciplines required to run a high availability, high efficient data center. Now, I'm not going to mention all the items that are in there. You can read them here on the chart, of which we are going to make a copy available to you so you can read it at your leisure. But as you can see, it starts obviously with service level management, because we need to know what the customer is expecting. Now, from an IT point of view, there are also many standards and guidelines that you can tap on in order to understand what is required in order to have a smooth operation, so to speak, from an IT point of view. I'm sure that you're familiar with terms like DevOps and Agile and COVID and ISO 20000 and the ITIL and all the other standards that are available. So in that sense, we are living in a world of standards. Unfortunately, not every organization is applying them or applying them correctly. So that was that part. We also have to look at people, of course. And as I said, people make up a major component in delivering IT services and to deliver them well. And we have to recognize that the world is changing, right? We have cloud, which is obviously, it used to be at least the good old like cloud is going to fix all our problems. And as we have started implementing cloud, I think many of you have come to realize that cloud is not a magic word, and that most of the people are now start looking at not just throwing everything into the cloud, but looking more at a hybrid type of scenario where some is on-prem in the good old data center and some is basically located in a cloud or hyperscale type environment. Then we have the good old AI, another lovely buzzword that is being used today. AI is truly the most abused word, if you ask me. Because what is AI? It's artificial intelligence, right? So how can you distinguish whether something is really AI? The moment that somebody says, well, I've been implementing AI, I'm still twitching parameters here and there and changing configuration files to optimize my AI, then the answer is already that is not AI, right? AI has the autonomous capability to self-improve and self-learn and optimize. The moment you still have to click buttons and change dials, that means that is not AI. That is just another version of what we did already 20 years ago when I started looking at some of this stuff, which was just data warehousing, analytics, and have a rule-based type of approach. Okay, mobility, 5G, great opportunities and challenges, of course, and all these lead, of course, to the headache for you and me to understand, like, how can we make sure that those very fast trends in technology that we can actually, catch on to that. I still remember that one of my friends who is a network expert, he said, if I want to stay an expert, I basically, cannot do any work anymore. The only thing I can do is read every day to keep myself updated with the latest changes and technology. And I think we are all in the IT and data center industry suffering from that perspective, that there is just too many changes, too fast, and we just can't keep up with it anymore sometimes. And that is a big challenge. Yeah, especially on the data center side, a lot of people are wondering, what is it really that I need to know? Yeah, or what is it that my staff needs to know in order to make sure that we can continue to run this type of complex and ever fast changing type of environments? How do I create a training plan either for myself or for my staff? And of course I need to look at what is their current role, or what is my current role, and what do I want my future, or what do I want the future to be of my people? And frankly speaking, sometimes we don't even know our future, right? It's already hard enough to look 5 years in the future, let alone 10 years in the future. And then, of course, if I have figured out roughly what I want and what skills I need to start mapping them to training programs and hopefully try to find the right program that can help me to stay relevant in the industry. And for facility, that is quite complex actually, because even in what you consider to be a standard data center, where we have racks and they are continued provisioned with power and cooling, even there are so many changes. You still see the good old outlet on the wall, but behind the wall, there is so many things that are changing. So as a data center engineer, I was normally talking about the good old UPSs and utility power, etc. But now, of course, the world wants to talk about green, renewable sources, self-generation, modular and scalable architectures. It never stops. When we are doing the cooling, if you are in that expertise area, we always used to talk about the good old racks, maybe 3 kilowatts, maybe 10, maybe even a little bit more. We talked about good old hot and cold aisle and all the other relevant topics. But now we want to be green yet again. We want to talk about free cooling. We want to look at, say, how can we get rid of all that heat and reuse it? What about liquid cooling? How about cooling those good old 30 kilowatt racks and above, which are, in some of the. And then we have the other areas like IT infrastructure. Those of you that answered the poll with that you are in IT, I think you must have had a little bit extra gray hairs over the last few years, because the good old one application per server doesn't apply anymore. Very easy now to indeed to add new virtualized servers. So application deployment, is easier. However, we have also seen that it has been abused, because it's now so very easy to copy paste and have another server running, so to speak, that some of you have become into an environment where it just becomes unmanageable. Many ghost instances of virtual servers that nobody knows what to do anymore. But hey, if we delete it, we might cause trouble. So why don't we just keep it running? And then we have another 100 servers running, which basically are not doing anything. I think for the good old folks on the data center side, we still remember the whole story about what we called comatose servers. Servers that were in rack, they were powered on, but nobody had a clue what was actually running on it, but nobody dared to switch it off. At that time, it was physically present. You could say, hey, I have no space in my rack anymore. I need a new server to be in there. What are those servers doing? Can I throw one out? But with virtualization, all those things become very, very difficult to monitor in some cases. And what about security? Because in the good old days, security was typically a physical affair in the data center. We just had big walls and boom barriers and security guards, etc. But now we are very scared about the network, because a lot of the facility equipment is literally connected to the network, either for control or in most cases, at least for a monitoring type of purposes. So we could have, for example, the good old chiller on the rooftop, which is now literally connected to a network connectivity, or sometimes even wireless for monitoring purposes. So now we have to be much more scared about that little fiber cable that comes through the wall, or that radio waves that can enter our building and literally take over the control of our whole data center. I think we have seen some news over the last years where apparently one country could literally shut down the power reactor of one other country virtually by just going through the network. We don't need nuclear explosions. We don't need rocket launches anymore to cause trouble in data centers or even other countries. And then the artificial intelligence, that's a whole new ball game. As I said, a lot of it is not really artificial intelligence at the moment. It's more rule-based modeling, but we are getting more and more into artificial intelligence. That's an opportunity. It's a threat, depending on how you look at it, but it for sure will change the operating environment in which we are currently going around. And don't forget this part, the soft skills. I think that a lot of people have come to see now that with all this working from home, social skills, especially in the younger generation, is not always as it was in, call it the older generation. Sometimes if you get a WhatsApp from a younger generation, it basically takes a dictionary to decipher what they try to say, because no more full words are being used and have all kind of acronym and all those emojis that sometimes you don't even know what it's about. But in the data center and IT environment, we see that you need to start getting better at soft skills. Why? In the old days, techies were sitting in the corner with a pot of coffee doing their job. And if something went wrong, the manager was drummed up to the board of directors trying to explain things. But don't be surprised that because the managers also have a hard time to explain what's going on, that they pull you out of the data center or your IT environment to say, can you put a handful of slides together to explain what the complexity is of implementing this new application, which the board of directors think is easy. Or you as a facility manager, could you please come to the presentation and throw in a couple of slides talking about what happened last week in the facility and what issues we had. And that requires skill, right? Sometimes techies don't have the presentation skills because they were never trained for it. They are very good at what they do, but they are not the persons that are selling the story in a smooth way. Maybe they're very harsh in what they say and everybody gets upset. So again, soft skills, very important in this type of environment. So that gives the headache. Yeah, how do you go about all the stuff? First of all, when you start looking into courses for IT or data center, the first thing is always like, are they truly experts or are they generalists? Yeah, there are plenty of organizations that selling 1,000 different courses, which obviously doesn't make them maybe a true specialist. What about the course development? Very important. Why do I say this? Because we as EPI, and obviously with EXIN as our accreditation, we look very careful at how courses are developed. Because some of the organizations, or I should say actually many organizations, the way they do course development is just by throwing a couple of slides together. After that, they start thinking about what kind of questions can we ask about those slides, and that is how basically the course is developed. This is very wrong and contrary in how EXIN and EPI is approaching it. The first key thing we always look at, say, what are the job requirements for people to be successful in their current or future job? From there, EXIN is developing the exam criteria to test those capabilities that people should have, and only then a slide deck will be developed to support the knowledge that needs to be imparted with the candidates in order to successful be able to have the knowledge and competences required, tested by the exam, and then we can let them loose, so to speak, in the IT and data center environment. Of course, we would like to make sure that whatever is being taught is conform the international standards, because a lot of organizations are following them. Vendor neutral. Now, of course, if you want to learn how to program a Cisco router, then of course you have to go for a Cisco course. But if it's a generic things like, say, how to design and build a data center, that's a different story. Accreditation, very important. And look at the accreditation body. We have seen some courses in the market that were done by accreditation bodies that also do primary school, hairdressers, nail salon, and so on. Obviously, that is not what you want from an accreditation body, right? They need to have a clear focus on the industry that the materials being taught. And of course, globally recognized. Yeah. So most of all, make sure that the competences are taught. Now, what we have developed for those who would like to know more about data center is a framework where we are addressing various disciplines of the data center. So we have the foundation course, which is very good for those who are new to the industry, maybe coming out of an educational environment or job switches. Maybe you're very good at electrical and would like to move into the data center industry, then DCFC would be great. We have a track for design and build. This is aimed at those people who would like to design, improve, or build a new data center and have already a bit of affinity with the data center. You might have walked around the computer room for a while or have been to a rooftop of a data center building, so to speak. And also somewhat more specialized courses in terms of networking, etc. We also have courses, of course, around the maintenance and operations, for those people who would like to understand how to set up an organization that runs a data center, how to go about operational processes, maintenance, governance, etc. And then some specialized courses around risk. Migration specialist is a very popular course now because many organizations are migrating part or all of their data center environment either into a new data center or maybe into a co-lossless hybrid type of style, and the risk professional. And then we have some track around standards and compliance for those people who would like to understand whether their data center is either design and build or are going to be design and build for a particular standard. The good news, as you could have guessed it, all the courses and exams are conducted and accredited by EXIN. Why did we use an accreditation that is external to our organization? Well, obviously to make sure that somebody else is checking, ensuring that what we are trying to teach to the market, that is appropriate, that is vendor neutral and standards based. And of course, having an external examination is very important because obviously we want to make sure that the exams are impartial. So EXIM was, of course, a very natural choice for us. It's a global examination and accreditation institute, independent, totally impartial, so they're not affiliated or related to any hardware vendor, etc. Operating under ISO, clear focus on IT and data center, and with certified people for over more than 2 million, you can't go wrong. So in terms of the training, different options, the good old classroom, which now is a bit of a challenge in some countries, although some organizations and countries start opening up. Virtual, similar to what we are doing now in a similar type of setting. And we have what we call TOD, training on demand, which is very good for those people who are extremely busy or who would like to go through the material multiple times in order to prepare themselves for the job and or the exam. So how do you get ready for the future? Well, very simple. Yeah, look at your current and potential future job role, right? What is your career path? Either what you have in mind or the organization. Analyze the competences that are required for your current role and for your future role. Look a little bit at timelines. Now I know that nobody can, define when they're going to make the next jump to the next level. That very much depends on markets, the growth of the organizations, etc. But at least get a little bit of a time scale for yourself worked out, especially if you want to be driven to a different type of career. And then, of course, find the right courses to support that career development. And the most important thing, if there's one thing that I think you would like to leave with today, make an appointment with yourself. And what do I mean with that? Well, we're all very busy, not enough hours in the day. The boss calls you up and says, hey, next week you need to do this and this and this, and hopla, there we go again. We shift everything aside and we do whatever the organization requests us to do. We have 365 days in a year. Why don't you take 1 or 2 days or maybe 3 days out of those 365 days, throw everything aside and dedicate it to yourself, right? And that's what I mean, make an appointment for yourself, because if you don't make that time for yourself, you could easily be left out, because the knowledge that you have today might not be relevant anymore for tomorrow. So invest in yourself, put time aside, educate yourself on what you believe will help you for yourself, and make that time. You are worth it to be invested in. And with that, I'm going to give you a couple of nice freebies, 3 sources. We have what we call the Data Center Competence Framework, the Quick Guide, and the Career Planning Tool. This is a freebie. You can go to the website. Again, you don't need to download it here. We'll give you the slides. It's called the Data Center Competence Framework. It lists over 30 job descriptions and all the competences that need to go with it. So if you say, hey, I would like to be a data center manager, what type of competence, skills and knowledge I would need to have, what is the job role about, what are the responsibilities and accountabilities, this document will show to you all. And as I said, it's about 80 pages plus, and it's all free for you to use. If you want to have a quicker guide, you can also download what we call the Data Center Training Quick Guide. If you would like to not go through all the documents and just want to have a quick view what type of courses might be appropriate for you, then this is a very handy document. It's available in 9 languages, so take a pick from that one. And then if you want to go more intelligent about what you like to be in the future, I would highly advise you to take this tool. It's called the DCPT, the Data Center Career Planning Tool. It's very simple. You go to the website, you log in, you give some data in terms of what your current job role is, or sometimes job roles, because some people wear multiple hats. Some of the job roles that you have an ambition for, and then a click on the button, and this tool will automatically tell you all the job competences that you require for now and for the future. It will analyze those, and it will come up with a training plan for you that is spanning not only data center but also other areas like agile and all the other fancy things that are available in the market, to show you what are some of the courses that you could think about as an enhancement, but also courses that are deemed to be really required if you would like to establish yourself in that new job role. So again, 3 resources for you to use. Take advantage of it. It was a lot of thinking and research that went into these tools in order to be able to give you, a proper view on your career path. And with that, we have come to the Q&A session. Now, as you saw from the introduction, we have a nice surprise for you after the Q&A session. So obviously, feel free to stick around and have a look at what we have for nice things for you installed. Open for the Q&A session.
Great, yes. Thank you for the presentation, Edward. Got a few questions coming in, but I'll just give people a couple of minutes to gather their thoughts. So you can type it into the question panel, and we'll give people a couple of minutes, and then we can get started. Okay, we've got a few questions now, so I'm going to, whilst other people have a think, I'm going to start with one question now. So the first one we have is, what is your opinion on implementing smart cabinet / smart aisle technology within current production facilities?
Right. Well, obviously, when we use terms like smart, there are different levels of smartness, so to speak. But smart cabinets definitely is a trend. And the reason is that it allows for more granular monitoring capability, and in some of the cases also control capabilities. So in the very high advanced environments, you see, for example, that based on, say, what is monitored in the rack, let's say power consumption in the rack, if that goes lower, then the air conditioners will be adjusted accordingly in order not to just keep blowing air based on, say, 10 kilowatt, where actually the consumption is only based on 5 kilowatt. So definitely a good thing to do. They don't come cheap though. So you really have to need to look at, say, the investment that you put in and what you get out of it. You don't want it to be a white elephant, right? Because that is happening in some cases where people throw in all kind of fancy stuff, having all those nice dashboards, great for the management to see all those flickering lights, but they don't use that data to their advantage to further optimize the data center or IT environment. So similar with network monitoring, similar with application monitoring, if you just install it and just think that the system runs itself, that obviously is not going to happen. So yes, great to implement, but make sure you really use all the features that those systems are offering.
Okay, great. Thanks for your answer. And secondly, we have, after taking the CDCE, I'm unsure of what to take to help me with my current job as an IT and data center manager. We are also about to construct new DC.
Okay. Well, if you have done the CDCE, which is the highest level in the design and build track, there are a few things that you could think about. Since he was mentioning, or she was mentioning, that they are embarking on a potential new data center build, then I would consider maybe the CTDC, the Certified TA Design Professional Consultant, because that gives more insight in the standard. And that gives really good detail in how to build, for example, a concurrent or a fault tolerant data center, and all those things that you need to be aware of. Again, that could really help. If it's more on the operations, so really on the daily facilities side in terms of maintenance and racking and stacking and capacity planning, then I would say look towards the CDFOS, the operations specialist, or the CDFOM, the Certified Data Center Operations Manager course, as that gives more insight into how to build the organization and how to manage the data center environment.
Okay, wonderful. Got another question here saying, what is your opinion about liquid immersion cooling? Is there any project that has been rated certified using a liquid immersion cooling?
Okay. Well, liquid and immersion, they are two different things. We can have like on-chip liquid cooling. That one I've seen in a variety of data centers already implemented. It is a good technology because obviously liquid, has a much more better heat dissipation capability than air. So you typically see it in a higher capacity environments. The bad news, it's not always designed for redundancy. So most of those on-chip type of cooling scenarios, they work, but the redundancy is typically then built into the IT layer, not so much on on-chip cooling layer. The other problem with on-chip cooling is that, normally what it means is that you basically run a pipe in the back of the server, so to speak, and you have a die plate which you mount on the microprocessor. The bad news, every time you change that, you have to change the die plate as well. Sometimes it comes part of the server, sometimes you have to buy a new assembly, which is a bit of a pain to go through. Submersion cooling, again, we see that more and more for the same reasons that, obviously dielectric cooling is much better than air cooling. Not easy to implement though, because it's basically a whole different structure, right? It's almost like having an aquarium in which you drop your IT, if you want to put it in a very simplistic thing. So maintenance is different. You can't build in the height. So in terms of your square footprint, you might be larger, although your density can be higher. So it's really a trade-off sometimes in terms of how you do it. And again, there are different type of submersion cooling, some that give off gas, some that requires a regular replacement of liquids, which could be a bit of a troublesome type of scenario. Is it a trend? Yes, it's the trend. Will it be superseded by maybe more efficient chips? That is what some of the organizations are hoping for, that the actual heat dissipation per chip will dramatically change once they can go into this bio nano technology, etc. But that is probably still another 5 to 8 years out at the minimum, in my view.
All right, great. Nextly, we've got a few more coming in now, which is good to see. We'll see if we can get through them all today, but let's carry on. The next one is, what do you think about having a cooling unit on, you have to have the acronyms here, but on UPS?
Cooling unit on the UPS. Oh, okay. No, sorry. I was quickly physically thinking about putting an air conditioning on top of the UPS, but I understand what they're meaning now. Yeah, this is the design philosophy coming out of, for example, Uptime. Uptime says that the air conditioning units need to be on the UPS to guarantee continuous cooling, whereas TA doesn't require that. Of course, it's good to have some continuous power, but a UPS is not cheap, right? Especially on the static UPS, it's a bad idea to put air conditioners on a static UPS for the simple reason of inrush currents that normally happen when cooling equipment kicks in, which results that you need to oversize your UPSs big time. If you put it on a dynamic rotary, then that is not a concern. But of course, you need to think about the capacity planning. Most of the data centers, they just rely on the air conditioning equipment being connected to the good old generator. So the assumption is that if the utility fails, the UPS will automatically kick in and basically provide continuous power to the IT. So that is all taken care of. Your facility equipment in terms of like cooling might go through the ride-through, which is basically between the utility going down and the generator being up to speed and having switched over. That could be literally in nowadays environments 5 seconds up to 10 seconds, then the generator is already stable. So you really don't need the air conditioners then to be on the UPS. That is 9 out of 10 times a waste of money, to be honest. If you're running high environments anyway, so we're talking about 10, 20, 50 megawatts, etc. Very often people don't use static UPSs anymore for the overall infrastructure. They're using dynamic rotary. And if you then connect your chilling infrastructure or your crack units on it in itself, that is never a bad idea.
Okay, wonderful. Next question is, do you think, with the environment in mind, there could be a separate course that should be green by design? That could be a
Yeah,
characteristic of any data center element.
yeah. Now, well, very timely. We are actually bringing to the market a course next year, which is aimed for people to understand more about a sustainable data center and all the elements. Unfortunately, at the moment, there are many standards and guidelines in the market, so people get a bit confused what to follow. Um, some of the technologies that sound very promising might not see the day of light. Some of the technologies sound good in the brochure, but are very cumbersome to implement or are not as green as people believe it to be. So we bring out a course next year to, weigh people a little bit through this mysterious field of operational and environmental sustainability to give some more insight in that, because it is a very difficult topic. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations are pushing it down to the data center manager and say, hey, I want you to save 20% energy next year because that looks good in our corporate goals. Good luck with it. And then the headache, of course, is on the data center managers to get it done. So yeah, definitely a good thing, and we are coming to the market with a course for that.
Super, that's great to hear. Okay, the next one is I want to develop a cloud computing platform in the future. I've worked in traditional and software-defined storage boxes, server, and switches in the front end. Could you recommend a course for me that could help me accomplish my goal?
Yeah, that's it's a good question. I don't have a direct answer for it because the virtualization environment is typically application driven. Let's put it this way. So if you're moving towards a cloud environment where it's driven, say, on an Azure type of platform versus a Google or versus an AWS type environment, that is different. So the first thing I would say is looking at, for example, the cloud courses that Exin has, which are the overall courses where you can get a good idea of what is cloud, what are the different variations of cloud, what are the good things, what are the bottlenecks typically in cloud. And once you have familiarized yourself with the overall structure and concepts of the various clouds environments, then you probably need to look at what is my organization gearing towards to. Is it more towards Microsoft Azure, or is it more towards Amazon AWS, etc.? And then take more application specific courses to support it.
Okay, great. Just looking at the time, so let's do one or two more, then we'll move on to the surprise. So next we have, I manage a data center and also manage inverters for ATM backups and UPS for branch IT load. I already have the CDFOM certification. What sort of certifications would you suggest for me
Okay.
in the view of my job role?
Right. Well, if you have a CDFM, so you're more on the operational side, then you might want to consider something like CDCP to get maybe a decent understanding on the overall concept of all the facilities part. Or if you already are very familiar with that, then it might be good to look at CTDC, to looking more at, say, standard specific implementations of data centers to maybe improve more the standards compliance. Of course, some other courses in terms of risk management or the migration might come in handy, but that depends a little bit on, say, what the organization is doing. CDRP, I think it's a bit of an undervalued course. It's a very niche course, of course, but it's quite funny because a lot of data center people don't understand the downtime really. It's very evident when I go into data centers and people always talk about how important the data center is. And if I ask them, what is your cost of downtime per hour? Then they're looking at me like if they get hit by a beer truck because they really have no answer, right? And it's very important to understand your risk profile, your risk area, so that you can actually say, where do we need to spend our time, money, and resources to minimize the risk? So CDRP might be another interesting course for that person to have a look at, to understand risk management as a broader concept and how to basically minimize the risk in their data center environment.
Great. Okay. And then next we have, can we use radiant cooling in DC?
Well, yeah, the answer is yes, you can, but it's not a concept that is being applied. As far as I know, I have not really seen it being used other in some very conceptualized type of setups where people are experimenting. But on a normal scale production environment, I have not seen it being deployed. Doesn't mean it has not. Obviously, I've seen many data centers, but I've not seen every data center in the world. So it might be, but I've not seen it in a production environment myself yet.
Okay, wonderful. Just looking at the time we have left, so unfortunately, we're gonna have to move on so we can get
Yep.
towards a surprise. I hope we've all answered your questions to the best of our abilities. Sorry if we didn't get time to answer your question. Thank you all for your attention, and shall we close up with this special
Yeah.
surprise?
Let's have a look. Let's see whether I can find the right button to reveal the surprise. There it is. So for you, and as a thank you from Exin and EPI to you for having gone through this webinar, we would like to offer you an exclusive discount of 20% on what we call TOD, the training on demand. As I said before, training on demand, great advantage, right? Because you can have a look at it 12 months, 24 hours a day. So you can repeat it if you want to, get yourself a bit more familiarized with some of the details in the material. Basically anywhere, anytime, and from any platform. So you can be sitting in the traffic jam and looking at the course. You can be sitting, at the couch and watch on your iPad or your PC, whatever it is. And like I said, great thing. The way we do TOD is very different than most organizations. Some of the organizations, you get a bunch of slides and you hear something in the background. But for us, it's almost like a live recording of a trainer. So you'll see the trainer actually explaining, just like how that particular person would also explain it to you in the classroom. You have the ability through a messaging system to ask questions as well. So it works great. Two courses we have on offer. For this one, we have the DCFC. So for those who are really new into a data center environment and would like to learn more, we have the DCFC, the foundation course. Or if you're already a bit familiar with data center environment, you can have a look at the CDCP, which assumes that at least you have a little bit of an idea what a data center looks like. The course is exclusive for you by using the discount code EXINEPI. You can register on the epi-academy.com, and the expiry is on Christmas, the 25th of December of this year. So you have a bit of time to think about it, but don't wait too long, because typically when we say we think about it next week, we tend to forget it, and that would be unfortunate if you lose out on that nice discount. And with that, I would like to say, on behalf of Exin and EPI, obviously, thank you very much for attending.
Yes, great. Sounds like a great little offer we've got there. I'm glad it's there. So yes, thank you all again for your time and attendance today. But don't worry, you'll receive a follow-up email with all of these links and the slides. So so you can go over this information again. I've seen some people have some questions about certifications further. They've left their email address, so we'll see what we can do there to get in touch with you. So with that in mind, I think we're going to close off. Edward, thank you very much for your time today. A really nice presentation.
You're welcome.
And thank you all for your attention today. And I hope you have a pleasant rest of your day. And we hope to see you again in another Exin or EPI webinar soon.
Take care. Thank you all for the attention.
Take care, everyone. Bye bye now.